what went wrong for this Tennessee team when you were here 2 weeks ago against Kentucky?
Well, neither team shot the ball particularly well, if I remember right. Both teams shot under 40%, and when you have difficulty scoring, it's not an easy game. I don't think Tennessee, looking at it, felt like they played anywhere near their best, and Kentucky had a lot to do with it. But in the SEC and the Big 12, it's amazing how many teams you're going to face that are desperate or angry in any given game, and that makes it difficult. So you're going to have games where you get beat, and that's sort of I think there's still in the coverage of basketball right now, there's still a little bit of a football mentality that somehow in college football, if you lose a game, you're out of the picture. And that's not true in basketball. You play a ton more games, and I think the numbers would probably work out to about the same if football played the same number of games as basketball. You're not going to have your A game all the time. But the good news for Tennessee is their defense has been consistently excellent. And you're going to have games where the ball doesn't go in. And I actually talked to Rick Barnes about that when I was here the day before. And I think he had said, the biggest concern that he hears from his fellow coaches is, are we going to make shots tonight? And the game is so physical that, you're having to finish through contact and all that, and it's different than it was years ago. It's more difficult. But I'm not concerned about, Kansas has lost 3 in a row. Well, this time last year, how many people thought Kansas was going to win the national championship? They just got their doors blown off at Allen Fieldhouse by Kentucky. I think they lost by 25. And nobody was counting them as a title contender. And same thing for North Carolina. Nobody thought North Carolina. This time last year, we were going, will North Carolina make the tournament? And they went to the title game with a chance to win it in the second half. So there's a long way to go. And all these teams go to practice every day. And a lot of them are getting better out of public view. So you play in a difficult league, you lose a game here or there, it's not a concern. But Tennessee has played. They've had some really good outings since that Kentucky loss, and their lineup has changed a little bit. Still the same players, but different lineups at times, and they're still the same contender today that they were before the Kentucky game, I think.
You did that 2006 Tennessee-Texas game here, right?
I don't remember. That's going back a ways. I might have. I might have. If I did, I'll take your word for it. I do a lot of games, so I don't remember that one specifically. If you can jog the memory.
Why has Texas been able to continue to have success despite the whole debacle with the coaching staff this season?
Well, they've got some older players, and the continuity having Rodney Terry step in there. Rodney was with Rick at Texas, and so he knows the program and knows the landscape. But having older players, I think, is really helpful in dealing with a catastrophe, which they had. But those guys have been through it. Some of them at different places. So for some of them, this is not their first stop. So it's a little bit like an NBA mentality in that regard. So it's been impressive that they've maintained that level of play, given the change in leadership.
Have you noticed any change in style of play since the coaching change?
Not really. They might call a few more sets here and there, but they're a very well prepared team, and their guards are excellent. They've got really good guards that can really score, and their big guys are athletic, and they really defend. That's a theme throughout the entire Big 12. They are all no middle smash mouth defensive teams, so scoring is not easy against them. But they're similar to Tennessee. They have off shooting nights too. They're not the most, I wouldn't say the most offensively consistent team, but they have a number of different players that can go off on you and give you 20 or more. And that's a nice feature of their team, is they've got multiple options to score.
Tennessee's defense ranks as one of the best in Ken Palm in the last 20 years. Does the eye test match up with that?
Yeah, because they do a few things that are really consistent. One, they play hard all the time. Everybody plays hard all the time, and that's number one. But they do a really good job of putting pressure on the ball, So they make it difficult for opposing offenses to get into what they want to do. And whether it's, Zakai Ziegler or Vescovy, Ziegler makes the opposing guard think first about him than rather than thinking about running the offense. And that's a really good trait to have. And then their gap protection is really good. They're well positioned with their help, and because their positioning is so good, they stay out of rotation, and then they rebound the ball well. And they've got a great combination of guys that can play. They can play small. They can go with a bigger lineup. When they play against a team like Kentucky, Plavsic can get in there and bang with any big guy and protect the rim. So they've got great attributes and really good players defensively. But the first thing is they play hard and together, and their pressure and their gap protection is really impressive.
Defensively speaking, how many guards do you think Zakai's size are there in the national picture that play as well as he does on the defensive side of the ball?
Not many. There are a few, but not many. Zakai does a great job because he's smaller. He's quick, but he's also really strong. And there's sort of a Muggsy Bogues similarity to that. Like, he can get up underneath you, and he's really pesky in that regard and relentless. And because he's smaller and strong, he's able to use leverage against opposing players. And it's really hard for teams to take advantage of him on a switch or by taking him down into the post. I mean, they want to do that, but one, it takes them out of what they normally do. But the other part is he'll just get in front of them and get lower and just fight them. Like it's front and fight and keeps it from going in there. So he's an impressive player on both ends of the floor. He's a really good passer and handler, and he could score, obviously, but his defense is I think what sets him apart, and what makes opposing players kind of dread dealing with. Like, he's hard to play against, and the one thing about any player is when the opponent leaves the floor and goes, I don't want to play against that guy again. I mean, Ziegler's one of those guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.